Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Peter Davis-Adkins. I'm one of the sales specialists from Cisco's enterprise networking team here in the United Kingdom. I'm joined here by my colleague, Ben Brophy.
Hi, guys.
He's one of the systems engineers within our team. And together, we're basically responsible for announcing and speaking to a lot of our customers and partners and driving awareness around a lot of the innovation that Cisco basically produce. Okay, so in today's session, Network Security from the Inside, we're going to be sharing with you some of the innovation, some of the new technologies, some of the new ways of delivering and operating in and around security on the network that were part of our launch, the Network Intuitive, back in July. Okay, so kind of the question which I'm trying to help you guys think about is, you know, how secure are you? And hopefully this will give you a bit of an enlightenment as to some of what we can do to support you in your journey to better securing and protecting the business. Now, before we kind of kick things off and get into the weeds of it, we do have a demonstration for you today, which, as you would probably imagine, has decided literally just before we walked in to stop working. So we had created a safety plan and we've done a screen recording that we can still walk you through to show you part of the demonstration, so not all hope is lost. That said, to prove that what we show you today isn't just a complete mashup, you can actually access it yourselves on ciscodcloud.com, okay? So when we often think about network security, I mean, the first default consideration is obviously thinking about firewalls, VLANs, ACLs. Some of you might even consider using VRFs to, you know, segment the network. The challenge with these methods is that they're very static, they're not very agile, and especially in the age that we live in today, the more devices that we look to connect to the network has quite a significant driver on the cost of operating our infrastructure. Now, enforcing security at the best of times can be quite complicated. Consistencies vary, and I think all of you would probably agree that a lot of the time we sometimes struggle to validate whether the methods that we've actually deployed onto the infrastructure are working as we basically intend them to do. So the big kind of thing that we're really seeing and talking to customers about today is around kind of cloud and obviously kind of the attack landscape, because one of the things that we notice, like this whole concept of digitalization, is so many of our customers are looking to innovate, but hackers and malicious parties are also looking to do the same, right? So they're looking to see how they can drive wider scale attacks using things like cloud. We've heard of you know, malicious parties providing attacks as a service on the dark web. So these are the types of things that we're having to deal with today, and that's before we even see the additional kind of growth and the exponential growth in the attack surface from technologies such as IoT. So Gartner predict 24 million new devices a day will connect to global networks by 2020. So if we struggle today, and we think 2 and a bit years ahead, what's that going to look like? How are we going to manage that? Now, one of the other things which I think is really important is that roughly 85% of organizations in the current day and age don't also know whether they've had a breach or not. So this transition, this whole idea about let's use more technology to redevelop, enhance old business models, create new services, be more competitive with startups, etc., and things like that, creates a real paradigm challenge for many of us today. So, I mean, the other statistic I want to share with you is Gartner kind of saying that 60% of digital businesses will experience major service outages. And I think, you know what, that's probably not far from the truth. I don't think that's unrealistic given the change and the trends that we're going to see today. So security is really, really important, and more ever so than today, it's a real necessity. But what it can't become is something that puts a strain on the network, something which gets away of performance, adds additional complexity in the way that we need to operate, creates further blind spots. It needs to be really agile, and the way we look to deploy that has got to significantly change. Now, in the past, obviously, striking a balance between networks and security has created a lot of complexity, and Ben's going to talk to you a little bit about actually what that complexity looks like and what that landscape is today for many of the customers that we speak to.
Cool, thank you, Pete. So I think this slide clearly illustrates the complexity that we're facing today in networks. So if we add point solutions into the network, these are things like firewalls, IPS, those kind of devices. Problem is, we can't deploy them absolutely everywhere. Why can't we do that? Clearly that's going to cost a bit. Okay, we'll have to update and manage all of it, update IPS signatures. So if we do that, it's going to become much more of a complexity burden on our organization. Also, as the complexity of attacks, complexity of managing these are going up, the capabilities of all of the new solutions that are coming out in the industry, they're barely keeping up. So actually, research has shown that most customers have up to 5 vendors, 5 security vendors or more in their network today, okay? Problem with these point security solutions as well is the fact that they may not necessarily all integrate with each other. So what happens if there was an attack in the network and we fail to see what's going on with that? They're not integrated, so we don't have any insight into how we can remediate it. Okay, so actually, you may find that legitimate security attacks get left behind and they sit dormant in your network for maybe up to 100 days. So we've got this effectiveness gap in the middle that we have to kind of try and get at. So Pete, maybe you want to try and elaborate on more details of what we're going to do to have a different approach to address this issue.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think one of the key things here is about bringing these two together. So we're going to show you some capabilities which we build into every single piece of infrastructure that we deliver to our customers today around the network. So leveraging NetFlow, data and information, using secure group tagging within the network. Yes, okay, using some policy engines and some automation capabilities, but ultimately leveraging these to drive better encryption, better segmentation, ease of operations out into the network infrastructure. So one of the big things that we've proven time and time again with some of our customers is that when it comes to security capabilities, integration is key. Okay, so taking multiple capability sets which might have previously been autonomous systems, integrating them to protect you along the timeline of attack, having the ability for those to communicate with each other and drive automation is what's going to make a difference for our customers today. And these are some of the things that we're going to show you. So being able to do this and use some of these tooling will give you better visibility. You'll be able to better control how you defend the actual network infrastructure itself, and most importantly, you'll be able to streamline your automation, or streamline through automation and improve your response times. Now, obviously, one of the big trends that we're also seeing is the rise in encrypted traffic utilization on the web and hitting our networks. And obviously, hackers and malicious parties are using that to embed malware and other things that we don't want hitting our networks to drive attacks. One of the things that we've recently launched called Encrypted Threat Analytics, which we will talk to you in a bit more detail about, will actually help you get around that. We've managed to be able to, without decrypting that traffic, achieve efficacy levels of 99.9% of being able to detect malware and encrypted traffics. And currently, we're the only organization on the planet with this capability. So I'm going to pass back over to Ben, and we're going to run the initial now video simulation, as we don't have the demo ability today. And we're going to show you some of the initial capabilities, how you can get better visibility, how you can start to understand and get behavioral analysis and drive better enforcement of security within the infrastructure itself.
Okay, thank you, Pete. So one of the first things we can use a product called StealthWatch for is actually checking the segmentation in our network. So last week I read an interesting fact that said that actually, due to the amount of segmentation that we're doing in networks today, separating out the different lines of business, it will become more or less impossible for a human being to log onto a box, type in CLI commands, and work out where that packet is actually going through the network. Because how do you actually visualize that through your mind? We look at IoT systems as well. You know, more things are coming onto the network, so segmentation is really, really key. It's not just a case of doing pings and trace routes. We need something more effective to check that segmentation is actually working. So this is StealthWatch. This is our dashboard. And already here we can find quite a lot of information about the network. We get alarms by type, so whether they are exfiltration attacks, denial of service and things like this, they are all along the top. And then we get a flow analysis. So we're using NetFlow here to gather information about the characteristics of our network, what is normal, what's not normal. And effectively, you can turn your network, so your routers and switches, into a sensor. So we call this network as a sensor, network as an enforcer. If you want to know more about this, please visit us at our stand, which is opposite here at C28.
So Ben, if you use an existing CM tool today, does this integrate with that? Are there integration capabilities for StealthWatch platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have integration with our Identity Services Engine platform. So through API integration, we can actually do things like identify a malicious host in here and then quarantine it through ISE. Yeah. So let's say that we want to actually check that the segmentation is working. We would go into the host search area here. Okay. We would run a filter for the last week, and we're using the concept of host groups here. So within the host group, let's say we've got an IoT example, and we've got IoT machines here. Okay, that's our source. And what we're doing on the right-hand side here is we're excluding everything that's legitimate. So our policy is that the machines are only allowed to talk to the control systems group that you can see here. That's the policy that's been set up. So effectively, if the machines talk to anything else, so if they talk to any other devices, users, then that's a breach of our policy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to review that query. Looks good. And we're going to run it. So in just a few seconds, you'll see that it will go through thousands, possibly millions of NetFlow records, and it's going to check that that segmentation is set up effectively. And hopefully we won't see anything. So let's just fast forward that on. There we go. Perfect, no results have returned. So most customers are like, oh, I'm a bit disappointed, I wanted to see something there. But actually this is a really good sign. This proves that our segmentation is actually working and the machines are only allowed to talk to the control systems.
And Ben, just before we move on to the next piece, from a device perspective, I mean, how widely supported is NetFlow across for example, the Catalyst switching part of the portfolio?
Yeah, so great question. We actually support this on the Catalyst 2K series of switches, 3K, 4K, 6K, and our newest 9K series of switches. We also support NetFlow on many of our routers and wireless LAN controllers and access points as well. So you'll probably find these days that most of our products in our portfolio support NetFlow.
Brilliant, thanks mate.
Okay, so let's take a look at another demo. Let's say in the company there was a rumor that somebody had taken data off-site. And at this stage it's just a rumor, so we have to see whether this is legitimate or not. So what we do here is through StealthWatch again, we can go into the host section, and when this loads, this is going to show all of my talkers and hosts within the network. So we have some key information here, when the host was first seen, when they logged onto the network, and when they were last seen. And we've got alarms along the top that are filtered by color, which can allow us to drill down in more granular detail. At this stage, like I said, we still don't know whether this is a rumor or not, and we still don't know what time this attack happened, if anything. So what we can do is we can use a filter to go down into exfiltration. Right here, you can see it has identified one host, and there's a lot of activity going on here. Again, this could be legitimate. This could be a legitimate file transfer. At this stage, we don't know whether data was actually taken off-site legitimately or not. So let's drill down and find some more details. So we've got a host IP here. That doesn't give us an awful lot of information itself, but what we can see is it's part of the control systems host group. So we know where that host, what part of the network that host is.
And just on that, Ben, the host IP address, I mean, I understand that that's got some limitations. Is there any way of getting a view as to actually within Active Directory, who is that user?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question there. If I fast forward a little bit, we've got integration here with ISE and Active Directory. So I can actually see that the user here is Lucy. So that's already pinpointed and fingerprinted the user. It's also fingerprinted their MAC address, their laptop, their workstation, and details like this. So we can see Lucy has been transferring data at pretty random times, to be honest with you. and it's consistent. It's just one user, it's Lucy. So if we go back to the top here, we can see that Lucy has been transferring data off to China. So again, that may be legitimate, it may not. It depends on the organization, right? And we can also see on the alarms in blue here that she's consistently done it for the past 7 days. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can also go into a filter here, and because we understand that this traffic is going to China, we can click external in this tab where it says application traffic, and we're able to tell what kind of application it is. In this case, it's FTP traffic, so it's a file transfer. And we can see rather a large amount of data was sent out of the organization. So with this information here, we're able to understand it's Lucy. They're part of the compliance systems group. They've got some very strange logon hours. We can understand that it's FTP application. So we've got a pretty good amount of information there that we can take forward and maybe quarantine this user. So like Pete said, through our integration with Identity Services Engine, immediately from the StealthWatch dashboard, we can actually quarantine this user and make sure that they can't communicate. So StealthWatch, you can think of it, to put an analogy on it, you can think of it as your phone bill. So think about your phone bill. You have the time that the call was made, you have the call, and you have the destination. So if you call Sheffield, London, Scotland, different places around the UK, and one day China appeared on there, okay, is that normal? You know yourself whether it is or not. So StealthWatch is that system that will tell you what's going on in your network, what's normal, what's not normal.
So one of the things on turning NetFlow on in the network, obviously, Ben, is a lot of people have had concerns about impact on performance.
Yep.
Okay, and as I understand it, it used to be done all in software. How have things moved on, and what's actually changed?
Yeah, really good question. So a lot of our switches in the Catalyst range have custom ASICs inside, so we're able to actually use full NetFlow, not sampled NetFlow. We're able to actually look at every single packet, and we're able to actually analyze that at line rate. That is then sent to the StealthWatch flow collector, and then it's presented here through the StealthWatch dashboard and presented out to the user. So from that perspective, there's no performance burden on the switches. Okay, so we've now, just to recap, looked at segmentation and checking that works in the network. We've also had a look at how you may spot an exfiltration attack. So if a user was able to take data off-prem. Now what we're going to show is how you would implement very easily a new segmentation policy using DNA Center. So we have an app here called our policy app. And if I go into that here, what you'll see is a bunch of virtual networks. You'll see the default virtual network, and you'll see I've segmented my network into corporate, guests, and IoT. So think of this a bit like your VRF segmentation. To do this on the command line, it would take a bit of thought, it would take a bit of skill as well. But what I'm able to do is very easily, using these groups, simply drag and drop them into the different virtual networks.
And where do these actual groups come from?
So the groups actually come from Active Directory, or ISE, or even ACI. So wherever they live, you can actually import them into this system. You don't have to necessarily recreate them within DNA Center. These groups, by the way, they could be set up however you want. So it could be, in the case of IoT, we've got an HVAC system, LED lighting, and IP cameras. So rather than identifying hosts by IP address, which at the end of the day is a network construct, it never really should be used for security because IP addresses can change, we're able to have a much more elegant way of identifying hosts, users, and applications. So that's one level of segmentation. What we'll look at now is, let's say StealthWatch identified an attacker on the network or a threat on the network within this IoT system. How would I be able to, within the same virtual network, further segment so they're not able to communicate with our HVAC system, our LED lighting, and our cameras? Traditionally, you may be able to do that with things like private VLANs, but again, there's more complexity when we do it that way. So I don't normally do this, but I think, Pete, you're up for the challenge.
Always up for a challenge.
Pete's not an engineer, but just to demonstrate how easy this is, Pete, would you like to demo the policy piece? Okay.
Absolutely. So I think obviously the element of micro-segmentation is great because it's all about preventing kind of threats further propagating within our environment, and that's I think that's really, really important. So Ben spoke about creating the virtual network. Ultimately, it's the VRF piece of technology. What I'm going to do now is effectively set up what was originally what we used to call TrustSec, or some of you may have heard of it as secure group tagging. This is no small feat or small task in kind of prior DNA center days, okay? It would be hundreds of lines of command, and not all engineers within a customer would understand how to do it. It could potentially be an incredibly costly project to go visit each device box by box to actually implement this. The value was huge, and I think from most of our customers, they all agreed that this would be loved to be something that they could use, but actually, commercially, let's be frank, it wasn't viable on a box by box basis, okay? So here what I'm going to do is actually set up a policy itself and create this micro-segmentation. So as this loads, what you'll see down here in the right-hand side is that if, say, for example, you have multiple virtual networks and you want to filter those, if it loads, and you want to kind of filter those, we've got the ability to do that down here, and I'll show you that in a moment once the page actually loads. We're not having much luck today. Maybe it's because I'm on the laptop.
There we go. We've got them up now.
Okay, great. So if I filter towards to the IoT network, you can see that actually reduces. And I've got the ability here to drag and drop, once again, these actual Active Directory groups into my source. And you can do this on a multiply select them, but I can't do that today because I'm holding the microphone. And I'm going to move my quarantine systems into the destination. And what you'll notice is that when you kind of roll up and you're looking at all your groups, you can actually see you've got the S and the D indicators on those boxes, so you can identify very quickly and easily source and destination. So when we actually configure a policy itself, it is unidirectional by default. In this version of code that we're running here today, which is our EFT code, okay, you don't have the ability to select the radial button to basically create a bidirectional policy, but that will be available on all kind of shipping products. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. So block IoT to QS, and you can give it a description and add a contract. So I'm going to say deny. So if we identify, for example, if StealthWatch picked up something happened, we quarantined, for example, IP cameras, and that went into quarantine systems, the contract that we're creating here means that can then communicate with any other IoT devices. And obviously, if we're wanting to make sure that once it's within quarantine systems that it can't communicate back out, then that's why we would need, obviously, the bidirectional piece. So if I save this, it will actually deploy. Now, where's it being deployed to? This is being pushed out to the Identity Services Engine. So if you've ever seen kind of a TrustSec or secure group tagging matrix, if you were then to load up ISE, you would see basically all of those AD groups, what they can access and what they can't, all basically pushed out to that platform.
Yeah, I think you passed the test there, Pete. You're now an engineer, but well done. I think that deserves a round of applause. Excellent. So what Pete's shown there is how easy it is to actually micro-segment in a virtual network. So rather than using complex extended ACLs and things like that, and then, in a year's time when your boss says, what's the business intent of that ACL? What's it doing? And you're like, I'm not quite sure, but I'm too scared to remove it. Hopefully this shows now that it's a bit more of an easier process to create some of those security policies. So thank you, Pete. So let's go back to our slides. One of the things that Pete mentioned at the start was we've got a new feature called Encrypted Traffic Analytics, or ETA for short. So this is a really exciting technology. It's come as part of our Network Intuitive as an announcement, and it's available on the Catalyst 9K series of switches. What we found that a lot of traffic these days is encrypted. So think of all of your web traffic. cloud apps that you use, apps on your phone, it's all beginning to be encrypted for privacy reasons. And in fact, Gartner predicts by 2019, 80% of all web traffic will be encrypted. So whilst encryption is great for businesses, you get a lot of benefits from it, it's also been beneficial for attackers because they're able to hide their attacks in encrypted flows. So what can we do to solve this problem? One of the ways we could solve it is by decrypting the traffic, analyzing the data and sending it on its way. Problem with that is we may not be able to do it due to privacy reasons. It's also very costly and expensive to decrypt, re-encrypt every single flow. So what if we don't have to decrypt the traffic at all? Well, this is what ETA is all about. So through NetFlow, we can have a look at what a Google search looks like, for instance, the characteristics of that, and what malware may look like, feed that into StealthWatch, and then we can effectively baseline a malware attack. That will be presented out to the business, and that will show you the attacks in the network. So we've had some great success with this, like Pete said, 99.9% accuracy, and yeah, it's something we're really proud of, something that not a lot of other people can do. So if you want to know more details on this, please visit our Catalyst 9K stand in C28, and we'll be happy to take you through a demo and more details on this.
So I think that's absolutely fantastic, and and Ben being the engineer is always a lot more modest. I'm the sales guy, so I want to hammer home that this is very unique. This is something that just we can do today. But on that note, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that you guys have to get help from us and get started with kind of utilizing some of this technology. One of the things that we do to support a number of our customers to help them actually get a visibility assessment done of their infrastructure, where are the gaps around the security, how can we better support you, what products, etc., might you actually need to help drive and move this forward. We do a lot of proof of values with customers. We're more than happy to get engaged, so if you speak to your partners and you want to try out any of this, we can either host you or we can do some on-site POVs to actually really get you under the hood and showcase this to you. But like Ben said, everything that we've shown you is available for you to access today on dcloud.cisco.com. So no smoke and mirrors. You can access this virtual instances, set that up, configure it, and try it out. If you're wanting to get a broader sense of actually looking at the network intuitive and all the technologies and capabilities which we launched as part of that and how they might fit into your current journey and roadmap, there's a readiness assessment on our stand at C28, just outside the main doors here. You can't miss it, which you can go through with one of kind of the grads who are hosting that, and they can help you understand a lot more about what we have on offer. Now, that said, one of the things which I think it would only be right just to close up on is that we're making a big shift as a business towards software. And in terms of how you get your hands on this, what you do on a day-to-day basis, how you buy things from Cisco and purchase them, in the past, all of these technologies would have been, additional options. Bolt them on, add them on, but that creates a lot of complexity and a lot of challenges for you as our customers and partners, because it might be creating a new budget cycle. It might be finding the owner or someone who's actually got some funds to invest in that space. Justifying business cases and creating those all takes time. You've got a lot of things to do, and we're just kind of looking at this now saying, well, we actually need to help our customers get better access to what we coin as our innovation. So now when we basically provide and sell the Catalyst 9000 series of switches, you have an option basically as default to get effectively 50% of the capabilities which we kind of showed you today, or all of them. It's really that simple. So from a price perspective, it's the same as buying the old 3850 switches. There's price parity, same as buying all the 4500s that we had available. We're not charging you a premium for that, but the value has shifted. The value is now in the software. Everyone knows that we're great at doing the infrastructure and all the plumbing, as I say, but now how we actually engage with that infrastructure, drive the train, drive the intent into the underlying networks, and be responsible for our business's success has got to shift. We've had so many customers saying that we make certain things very difficult for them, and this is kind of a new era of networking for us and actually a new way of going to market around these technologies. So I hope you found today useful. As I said, do come and speak to us. There's a lot of experts on the stand. There's a network as a sensor stand over there. So if you're wanting to get under the hood with secure group tagging and TrustSec and ISE, the Cisco umbrella guys are also over there with OpenDNS. So do come and have a conversation with us, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.